What are they going to do? Are they going to make our prophetic remarks about this spreading really rapidly and profoundly come true? Are they going to insert themselves in the war with Iran on the side of Saudi Arabia and ultimately us in Israel? I dare say not, but I await developments.
Larry, go ahead. Your understanding, what do you make of it?
Well, when you're going to find a defense pact, you ought to ask the question, who are you expecting to fight? We've already seen that the Houthis have launched attacks inside Saudi Arabia that under the terms of this agreement, would be considered an attack on Saudi, so therefore it's an attack on Turkey and Pakistan. But we've already seen, there's already that kind of agreement in place between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. And in the wake of the Houthi attacks, the Pakistanis step up and threaten the Houthis so far. So I suspect it's directed at Israel. And, I'd be curious to see what the Hebrew press, how they react to this. Because creating that kind of alliance is, on paper at least, something that, if you're a military planner in Israel, have to be pretty worried about. But, Erdogan signing something, he's just a windbag. He will talk a tough game, but, as long as he's making money off the oil that he's selling to Israel, he's not going to do anything wrong that. Pakistan sees itself, and I'm seeing this because of some of the intelligence that's being shared with me and Pepe. The Pakistanis sure have an inflated view of themselves. They see themselves as this, we're an emerging global power now. We're getting to play in the big chess game, and yet domestically, the Pakistanis got some real problems. And under this, let's say that Iran launches an attack on Prince Saud Air Base because the Prince Saud Air Base is being used to launch strikes into Iran. Would that activate this treaty? Because the last thing Pakistan is going to do is attack Iran, given the majority, the substantial number, I'm not sure it's quite a majority, but it may be, in Pakistan, of Shia Muslims who are very supportive of Iran, not antagonistic towards it. So this is, I think as Colonel Wilkerson said, this is probably more directed at the United States, just to say, we're no longer having to suck on your hind tit.
Colonel, if you were talking about these sort of attacks happening in the region before the war started, it is somehow delusional. Why do they need to do this? They have the American bases there. Saudi Arabia doesn't need to go that far right now, but when it happens, it means something for the region. It means that the region is trying to redefine itself. In this redefinition,
we are driving McLean, Virginia, Washington, D.C.
It's not like this hadn't happened before, Nick, and it has involved Turkey even. Remember this dispute between Qatar and Saudi Arabia, and the Turks actually put some troops into Qatar, as I recall. And that was solved eventually, and I think the troops have gone home. I imagine they have now, since Qatar's being hit too. So it's not as if it were new, and we had major discussions going on, we being the Pentagon, about a new security arrangement in the Gulf and what it might look like, and there were several proposals for it. The GCC was, I think, recognized by those who had a brain in the Pentagon, and I qualify that way because I'm not sure there's anyone in the Pentagon with a brain anymore. They've all been gotten rid of, but anyone with a brain could see the GCC was lackadaisical at best and even injurious at worst. So there was real work going on about how would you design a new security architecture for the region. this war of choice that Trump has started, I suppose, if anything was still going on, has thrown that into a cocked hat. And everyone's probably trying to figure out how this is going to settle out and what is going to be the U.S. role if it settles out inimical to a continued presence of the U.S. I mean, I would be thinking, or I know 6 or an 05 on the Joint Staff, I'd be thinking seriously about, one, will we be there? And my answer would be, hypothetically at least, and growing more and more concrete, no. What do we want there then if we're not there? That would be conducive to our interests and more or less conform with those interests, and that we could maybe influence occasionally by offshore balancing, we used to call it. Although I'm not sure that strategy's got much health left in it after what Bradley Cooper has done with the naval forces that are now embarked in this campaign. Yesterday, I was being told the condition of the sailors on one of the carriers. I'm not exactly sure which one it was. I think it was Lincoln, but it's dismal. They don't have enough water to drink. They don't have enough food to eat. They're just miserable on that ship, which is testimony to surface warfare officers in the Navy's attention to their troops, if you will. So, I don't know what's going on right now, but I do know there is sound strategic thinking and even operational thinking would be considering right now what kind of arrangement should we successfully get through this disaster that Trump has created, should replace us or be what we would be comfortable with in terms of security in the region. Because I don't think we can just totally say, okay, we're out of there and gone. I think we need something there, not unlike what we had before when we had the Shah and when we had Saddam to balance the Shah and such. Can't be anything like what it was in the past in terms of U.S. commitment, and no boots on the ground, period. There'd be no boots on the ground. In fact, I don't even mean combat boots necessarily. I mean all boots. I mean commercial and other boots, at least initially. I'm sure the contractors will go back in when Saudis need this or need that or whatever, if we have anything remaining that looks anything like the pre-Trump war Gulf. But it's got to be decided what we're going to do, and somebody's got to be thinking about that. We can't all be excess and Trumps and be so stupid that we aren't even thinking about tomorrow and the next day. And you've got to be realistic about it. We're gone. We're gone.
But let me just follow up on that, particularly the condition in the Navy for both the sailors and the Marines. So I started getting emails from an angry, pissed off mother about 2 weeks ago, and she was sending me. She said, "Look," because I guess she had spoken to this reporter at the USA Today. That reporter had written an article in April. But now, the way the article was titled by the editors was, "Oh, the United States government suspending mail deliveries to sailors and Marines on board ships." But buried in that article is really about the crappy food. We're talking, this isn't about wanting to have a fine dining experience on board the ship, but at least something that's edible. And this mother, she was sending me the text messages that she'd had with her son, because she said he lost 30 pounds, and she sent the picture showing the kid when he got home. He was emaciated. And so I'm thinking, well, this is one mother. Well, I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee last weekend at the Robert Barnes conference, and we had different sessions where the people get to come up and meet and chat with you. So I started chatting. This one woman came up, and we started talking, and somehow she just mentioned in passage that her son, who is a Marine, this other lady's son was a sailor, and he'd been on, the sailor was on the Tripoli. And this mother somehow that came up that her son had just come back from deployment. And I said, where was he? Oh, over, in the Boxer, I believe. And I said, well, I've heard some stories that the food situation isn't good. She says, let me tell you. Here was another pissed off mother. And the same thing, the same story that I got from this other lady. They didn't know each other. So, and so, what was Hegseth's response to this? He made a show about a month or two ago, going out to one of the ships and eating in the officers' mess. And so, see, the food's just fine. Well, no shit. When officers eat first, and they're not down in the mess with the sailors and the Marines, yeah, they get a different level of service, and that cuts against the grain of everything that I was taught by my mentor and dear friend who is now deceased, Dick Gannon. Dick was a Marine 06. He'd commanded the 5th Marines, and he helped set up diplomatic security at state. But that's another story. But man, he drilled into me because he was my boss. I was his only employee. Okay, so I literally sat across the desk from him. My duty every morning was to get him a chocolate donut. But man, he taught me officers eat last. You've got a responsibility to care for those under your command. And man, this current crop of officers on board that ship, naval and marine officers, they are dropping the ball.